The Volta River Authority says it has procured 600,000 barrels of crude oil to maintain current power supply in the country as the Ghana Gas Company prepares to shut down the Ituabo gas plant for a mandatory maintenance from Friday.
The news that very soon Ghana Gas will be due for mandatory maintenance. That is supposed to take about 2 weeks. Now, if that happens, we could be losing over 600 megawatts.
Deputy Power Minister John Jinapor said the country required 4.5 billion cedis worth of crude to keep the various plants active in order to guarantee stable power for 2016 alone. So what is the country's fate regarding the load shedding?
The load management team has not been disbanded. The advice from the load management team is that we cannot officially declare load shedding over as of yet.
Well, the VRA is already asking us to tap them on the shoulder for uninterrupted power supply for just 2 weeks. But what really has happened to load shedding? Has it stopped? Or are we just enjoying a grace period and go back to the dark? Well, these are questions begging for answers. We'll find out right here on today's big story. My name is Aishuba. Head of the Ghana Grid Company Limited, William Amuna, told journalists in Accra today that even though the load shedding had been suspended for about 3 weeks, the situation is still dicey.
I'd want to confirm here that close to a month now, we have not called for any load to be shed in the country. Normally, GRIDCO would have to make a study, look at the supply situation and the demand situation, and inform the load management committee. Then ECG will be called upon to execute the load that will be shared. But I'm happy to say here again that close to a month now, the document GRIDCO sends to the load management committee indicates load shedding 0 for ECG, 0 for NETCO, and 0 for industry. That means that we are not shedding load at all. As indicated earlier on, there are various challenges also in our distribution network. So once in a while, you may have your area going up, but that doesn't mean we don't have enough supply. In fact, presently, we have close to about 6% more than we need. One would ask, what allowed us to get off this problem of load shedding? We had a 110 megawatt TICO expansion project at Abuazi commissioned and supplying power to the system. And for the many people who have been very interested in the batch, the car power project, we are well aware that it is delivering 225 megawatt into the system. In addition, there is yet another addition to the system, the Trojan project that is providing 25 megawatt of power at Tema. That is run on diesel. Now, if you add all this, then you would realize that we've added quite a big chunk of power to what we already have. There are other projects that are ongoing and expected to be completed within the year. In fact, very, very soon, all these projects will be on stream. We have the 220 megawatt Pontema power project. They have tested, actually injected some power into the grid system, and they are still going on with the commissioning process. We have a 360 megawatt project being undertaken by the Sunon Asogli power plant, and that is also very close to commissioning. We have the 38 megawatt VRA TT2PP expansion project that is also close to commissioning. The Ameri project. The Ameri project is about ready. Indeed, tomorrow, we should be injecting the first phase of 100 megawatt by tomorrow into the system from the Ameri project. There is a solar system that has also been put in place. It's about 20 megawatts and will be on stream very soon. All these plants will be feeding into the national grid very, very soon. The projected peak demand for 2016 is 2,477. It will be interesting to note that if you take this peak demand, 2,477, you take all the countries to the west of Ghana in West Africa, if you total their demands, it's equivalent to our figure. That shows how far we've gone as a country with regards to our power supply, where we have about 80% of our citizenry having access to electricity. At this peak demand, if all new generation projects are completed as scheduled, and barring any unexpected plant breakdowns, we should have enough generation capacity to meet the projected demand. We should take note that demand in Ghana grows between 10 and 12% annually, and that is one of the biggest in the world, only comparable to that of Qatar. We have observed that the reserve margin is about 146 megawatts, which is only 5.9% of the projected peak demand. In effect, the system will be constrained if any unit has to undergo maintenance. So that means we have the supply, we have just a little more, but if one unit breaks down or goes out for maintenance, we may be constrained. Ladies and gentlemen, with the inflow of the Volta Lake at its west scenario, presently we don't run more than 3 units at Akosombo. That shows you how serious the situation is. We cannot in 2016 depend highly on hydroelectricity. Thermal power definitely would dominate our supply situation. Now, in order that we have adequate power supply, we would need to fuel such plants with light crude oil, heavy fuel oil for the barge, and then diesel for some of the other plants. I need not overemphasize the inadequate supply of gas from N-Gas, the Nigerian gas, from the West African gas pipeline. We therefore have no choice but to complement our indigenous gas source with light crude oil in the immediate term. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to say that the medium-term outlook for the power sector is very bright. You may recall that when this crisis started, the Minister of Power had to come out with short-term measures, medium-term measures, and of course, long-term measures. We are about through with the short-term measures, and the medium-term measures include a 186 megawatt T4 project, which is being undertaken by VRA, a 110 megawatt TT1 PP Senate expansion to combined cycle. Now, in Tema, VRA has a plant, a gas turbine, which is on simple cycle. Senate has another plant, which is on simple cycle. So for the two of them, you can build what we call a heat recovery steam system to be able to come out with a combined cycle system to add more power to the system. So this would add 110 megawatt to the system to meet what we normally call the 2-by-1 configuration. We have a 110 megawatt KTPP expansion project. I indicated that earlier on. VRA is testing that, and it's about ready. But in future, that plant would also have to be converted into the combined cycle mode to make it more efficient. VRA is in talks with Sunan Asogli, Shenzhen, to come out with a 700 megawatt coal power project. Coal here, we are talking about clean coal technology, otherwise known as supercritical. We are not talking about the coal systems that we knew that virtually made the environment unbearable to live in. Now, ECG has also signed power purchase agreements to cover 1,000 megawatt projects, which include the following: the Sunan Asogli Phase 2 that I indicated earlier on, a 340 megawatt SEN power project. Recently, the ministry took a number of journalists round to have a look at the SEN power project where construction had actually started. That's about 340 megawatt, and that is a medium-term project. We have a 360 megawatt Jacobson Electro project, 190 megawatt Amandi project, 370 megawatt AXA project, 344 megawatt early power. For those who are aware of the GE project, they have a part 1, which is about 344 megawatts, which is known as the early power project. Then finally, we have a 107 megawatt TEI project. We have heard in the news that very soon, Ghana Gas will be due for mandatory maintenance. That is supposed to take about 2 weeks. Now, if that happens, we could be losing over 600 megawatts because the plants in Abuazi run on gas from Ghana Gas. Now, we have put in place measures to ensure that adequate supply is maintained during this period.
The Deputy Minister of Power, John Jinapor, is sure, notwithstanding the challenges facing the power sector, Ghana remains the second country in sub-Saharan Africa with 80.5% electricity penetration nationwide. Adding, government will not relent in its efforts to ensuring that all Ghanaians have access to steady, stable, and regular supply. So does this mean we're saying goodbye to doom so? Let's listen to the Deputy Power Minister.
The load management team has not been disbanded. The advice from the load management team is that we cannot officially declare load shedding over as of yet, even though the current situation is that we are able to meet the demand. The load management team has indicated that you need a certain level of redundancy. And that is why Engineer Muna indicated that if by accident or by whatever means one plant goes down, especially the major ones, you would have a setback. And so they know the margins and the reserve percentages that we need to attain, and also observe the system for a period of time before we can finally and eventually declare load shedding over, and also possibly or probably disband the load management team. And that's why I said that the load management team shall continue to monitor the situation.
Let's do some analysis now. Our man, Justice Baidu, was at the press conference for joining us. Justice, what were the highlights of this press conference? I know one main issue that featured is the fact that the Atuabo gas is going to shut from Friday. But what else, apart from that, did they talk about?
So really, this press conference had been necessitated by the announcement earlier this week that the Atuabo gas plant was going to shut for 2 weeks, and so expectations, and then the rumors that went around was that obviously if you're going to be shedding as much as 600 megawatts of load, then we are going to go back to the situation where we were before December, when the situation normalized. And so it was important for the ministry to see what exactly the contingency measures were. And like we've said, what essentially came out was that there were indeed, we were going to shed that much of load, but then the VRA has been put itself in a situation where it would be able to maintain the power that we currently do enjoy. But most importantly is also that how much the sheer amount of money that the country is going to be spending to power the various plants that we've got in the country. The Sona Sogli plant, it says we did up to about 4.5 billion cedis to be able to maintain, to supply the power, the crude that is needed for the plant to keep working. So the country enjoys. No, so I mean, Atuabo is off for 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks, VRA has procured over 600,000 barrels of crude. Right. But the bigger issue then is that within over the 2016 year, we will need 4.5 billion cedis to be able to fuel the plant, to be able to ensure that we maintain the rate where we are, right, so that we don't slide into the power crisis again. But what then that also prompts then is that we have to be paying for this money. So I heard the minister talking, advising consumers to pay for. Exactly. But did they assure us of quality service? Because if they're demanding that we pay promptly, then we should be demanding for quality service. Did they give any assurance? What the minister said, and indeed what most of the engineers who came from the VRA, NEDCO, and the independent power producers were saying that we currently are running at a deficit, which means then that how much power that is being sold is not the value, the money that they are getting back does not correspond, and so there is a deficit, and as long as that deficit persists, we will still be in a situation where we would, because the ECG has challenges, VRA has challenges in terms of how much they buy. Indeed, he said that VRA spent 34 cents on every megawatt of power that they produce, but then they are getting less than 30 cents back in terms of revenue that they generate. And so clearly, these shortfalls still exist, and it's part of the reasons why they are unable to state whether Dumsor is over or not. Let's get onto the phone line and speak with an energy expert, Kojo Poku. Good evening. Many thanks for joining us on today's big story. The minister has stated that he cannot tell if Dumsor has ended, but he assures us that the Dumsor or the load shedding management team are still in place monitoring the situation. What does all of these mean to you, and what kind of meaning should the ordinary consumer read into this statement? I think we're having problems with our phone line. We lost Kojo Poku. They'll try and get him back. But just as one other thing he said, the Deputy Power Minister said, government is assisting ECG to procure and install a state-of-the-art prepayment system to boost their revenue mobilization efforts. Did he outline I mean, what kind of support they're giving and what kind of prepayment system they're going to install, so that consumers are assured that we will not buy 100 cedis credit and 52 cedis will be deducted? The sense I get from what he said mainly is that government really at this moment is going to zoom in on making sure that people pay for the power that they enjoy. Right. And so he's actually said that there's going to be a major audit process to audit the revenues of ECG, right, to ensure that people are paying for the power that they are getting. But then what all of this is about is then that if ECG is efficient, if it is producing as much as it is getting in terms of revenue, right, then it would be able to reinvest into its supply network systems, and because the load shedding had gone on for such long number of years, it has also affected some of their transformers and all of that, and so they need to be able to replace all of these transformers as and when they break down. It is only then that the ECG would be able to, which is responsible for actual supply of power into our homes, would then be able to say that. But I'm more interested in the shutting down of the Atuabo gas. It's going on for 2 weeks, and we're told we're going to lose 600 megawatts of power. Megawatts of power. That's a lot of power. Did he explain to you how that is going to affect supply of power? I know they have some contingency plan, but we cannot rule out the fact that we could get some power outages here and there. Did he explain how the 600 megawatts will be shared on the national grid? I got the feedback from them that this is obviously going to have a negative impact, because then if we are talking about 1,900 megawatts, that a little around that figure, and that is currently being spent, you are going to lose 600. That's a lot. Yeah. But then because they are going to be relying on the plants that have been fueled by the crude that has been purchased by VRA, it is assured that to a large extent we are not going to be greatly affected as it was the situation before December. Right. But then he went on, and in many of the speeches that was said by the Deputy Power Minister, the head of Gridco, and even heads of some of the independent power producers, it was obvious that the situation is really, really still dicey. You cannot state for a fact that if you went home today, you wouldn't find your lights off.
And to the extent that the Minister of Power, the Deputy Minister of Power, is not sure whether the load shedding has ended or not. It's a bit of a problem.
It's because we currently, like the engineer Muna said, that we are only above our demand just by 6%. Right. And if one of the plants were to go off just tomorrow, we are taking off about 200 megawatts, and that's obviously it's a great shock, and it's one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why you cannot they are unable to state that whether doomsday is over.
But I think that if a technical team is in place, they should be able to tell, because load shedding is different from, I mean, the normal load shedding we know is different from a plant going for maintenance. For instance, if a turbine is going for maintenance for 2 weeks and you tell us that, okay, we're going to shed your load because we're losing 600, we want to do some load shedding for the 2 weeks, I think consumers will understand. And if all the other plants break down, and we know, but I mean, the load shedding we've been going through, it's been a lot of issues compounding and making us go through. So I think they should be able to tell us that, okay, we've resolved a number of the issues, but we're not sure. I mean, a machine works, it can go off any time. So if a machine goes off, then we will tell you that we'll be shedding load. But that doesn't mean that, it means that will be temporal. It won't be permanent like we've experienced before.
It is in response to the concerns like what you are raising now, that the Ghana Grid Company is saying that the problem that we are experiencing now as a country is a result of about 10, 15, sometimes 20 years of a lack of investment in the energy sector.
We know about that.
He did mention the contingency measures that the power minister that just resigned, Dr. Kwabena Donko, outlined last year when he assumed office, which were in threefold: the immediate measures, the medium term, and then the long-term measures. And so,
well, let's hope that the contingency measure, I mean, for this 2 weeks, we don't want to go back to the darkness. And so we hope that the contingency measures will help us so we don't go back to those days of Ghana in the dark. This is today's big story. We've been talking about a press conference by the Power Ministry explaining to consumers that there are some contingency measures, even though the Tuabo gas will be going for maintenance for 2 weeks. The Power Ministry, VRA, Gridco are putting in contingency measures to ensure that we don't go back to our old days of doomsday. But what they're not sure is whether doomsday has ended or not. That the minister could not tell us. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Good evening.